recording thing so that we are ready to go. Is that correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
All right. What I propose is to work through our traditional lunch break. We'll take a break for lunch, but I'll tell the jurors that we're going to take this witness because the witness is available and we need to make hay while the sun shines. That sound like a plan? That
is a plan, Your Honor. We suggest that the court make the gallery aware they need to turn their cell phones off. There's been some potential problems with communications outside the courtroom.
All right, we don't want any more delays. You folks in the gallery, check your phones now. Make sure that they are turned off. Bring in the jury.
Court, can you hear?
Yes, sir.
All right, sir. Thank you. So we'll see one last frustration. So we'll see.
Whenever I was much younger than I am today, and I had a TV set up with an antenna, and we only had 2 or 3 channels. When the TV would go out and you'd try to get a picture, there'd be a placard on that would say, "Sorry, we are having technical difficulties." Some of you may remember that. And my heart as a child would always sink whenever I saw that sign. This is what's happened to us. I even thought about getting a sign and holding it up for you folks. I am a curse when it comes to technology, and things just don't seem to work right around me. I'm so old-fashioned that I still write my checks out by hand and put them in an envelope and get a stamp and send in the bill. But we've straightened it out. Now, you can see that we're close to the lunch hour. The witness is here with just a kind of a short window of time, and we want to accommodate him. So we're going to work through the traditional lunch break, but never fear. We will take a break for lunch. It's just that we'll be a little bit later than usual. If your stomach begins to growl, we'll overlook that. We won't pay any attention to that. And I apologize that we're not taking our lunch break on time. But I know you folks have been patient and you've had to wait, and we need to make some progress in this case. So if you'll please bear with us. We are still, of course, on the state's case in chief. You may call your next witness, please, Mr. Truman.
Your Honor, the gentleman that appears on the screen is Mr. Nexon.
All right. Sir, I can't tell whether you are seated or standing. Are you standing?
I am standing, Judge, and I have a stand-up desk, and I don't even have a chair, so I am in a standing position.
All right, well, would you please raise your right hand, sir? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
All right. I would normally say you may be seated, but you're standing at your desk, and so you can remain so. Before we get started, let me explain to the jury, ladies and gentlemen, you are watching this next witness on video. You should regard his testimony in the same manner as you would if he were right here in the courtroom amongst us. So assess his testimony and the credibility thereof, just like you would any other witness that is called to appear to the witness stand here. With that, Mr. Truman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Nexon, would you please spell both your first and last name for the court reporter?
Yes, sir. So legal first name is Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L. Last name is Nexon, N-E-X-S-E-N. Middle name is Courtland, hence the name Court.
How do you spell Courtland?
C-O-U-R-T.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was Courtland. I beg your pardon. Mr. Nexon, could you tell us your background, please, and specifically your employment and education?
Yes, sir. If it's helpful, I am loud by nature. If I need to talk louder or quieter, Mr. Truman, please just tell me. And first and foremost, the judge and jury, I truly appreciate you all letting me do this virtually. Grew up in the state of Virginia, Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia for undergrad. Started my career in New York City in finance. Came back to business school at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, Virginia. Have stayed put there ever since to raise a family. And for 6 years worked for what was U.S. Trust, and that became Bank of America's private bank. I currently own and run a farm estate and residential real estate company in Charlottesville, Virginia, called McLean Faulkner Incorporated.
Thank you. Could you tell us your initial involvement with Natalie and Michael Cochran?
Yes, sir. So my job at the time it was U.S. Trust at Bank of America's private bank was I led a team that dealt with high net worth individuals and families, from investing money to banking to helping kind of oversee their assets. And so in Charlottesville, I was tasked with new business development and kind of being the face of the team for potential new clients. And so somewhat out of the blue, the Cochrans were routed to my team, which came to my desk to interact and speak with them.
In terms of the division of your time with the Cochrans, did you spend more time involved with Natalie Cochran or Michael?
The bulk of it was with Natalie. The only thing I recall is one time there was a gentleman on the phone there in the car who said it was Michael Cochran. The rest was pretty much exclusively with Mrs. Cochran.
How did you communicate with the defendant?
So it was interesting. If my memory serves, it was almost like a phone call out of the blue, and kind of listened to the story and kind of how they got routed. And then primary conversations were email driven as well as some phone conversations.
Do you remember your first, or have a recollection of your first phone call conversation with Natalie Cochran?
High level at a macro point, essentially it was someone talking about very large sums of money, talking about business interests, and I get the sense because of the level or the amount of money they are discussing, and even though it was involved with businesses, it all tied back to an individual, and that's what U.S. Trust or a private bank deals with. And so not exactly sure how, but it makes sense that if the Cochrans are talking to the business banking world of Bank of America, that entity would have flagged and said, you need to speak with U.S. Trust. And given the West Virginia location, I believe the Charlottesville, Virginia office would have been the closest in proximity, and that's how things kind of got routed to me.
All right, sir. You indicated phone calls, but your primary means of communication was through email. Is that correct?
I would say it started with a phone call, and while there were some calls initially, it was then very email driven, and I don't want to jump ahead. As things kind of played out, the bulk of it was driven through email.
Your Honor, the defense has reviewed the document that the state would mark as state 4.
Yes, number 4.
All right.
Can I see it again? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I beg your pardon.
Could I please have exhibit 3?
It's that line. It's over there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Let's see. Yeah. Also, what are you?
All right, you may continue, Mr. Truman.
Thank you. Mr. Nexon, the first email that the state wanted to discuss is where it was dated February 4th of 2019 at 11:55. And so that we can identify your emails, they all have a ustrust.com email address, correct?
Correct.
And in that email, you're merely providing personal contact information to the defendant, how she can get a hold of you with a direct line, right?
Correct, yes, sir. If it's helpful, Mr. Truman, I have that email in front of me.
Okay. Well, through the miracle of modern Chinese technology, we're able to hook you up this way with a telephone and through the internet, but unfortunately, we can't display the documents at the same time, so we'll just talk about them. But thank you. The next email is the following day, and you received an email from the defendant at about 11:11, timed 11:11. You able to look at that email?
Yes, sir.
What's the substance of the defendant's information to you and your response?
So after the initial phone conversation, our job is to kind of follow certain procedures, protocol, information gathering. And so in order to do anything with our team, we have to document certain pieces of information. And so we kind of asked Mrs. Cochran for certain pieces of information that would help us slowly start to effectively build a relationship and establish the accounts. And so that's what we had asked her for after that initial phone call in order to start slowly moving forward.
Your Honor, may we approach on all of this?
Sure.
Thank you. Bear with me just a moment, Your Honor. We had to kind of adjust here on the fly.
Okay.
How was this account initially set up?
The account, so, and I don't want to jump ahead, I mean, high level, when we receive a phone call like we did, which is throwing out really big numbers, our job is we have to take it seriously to see if it's real. I think our initial instinct was this probably isn't real, but we will take every step. And so first you have to make sure that the human beings are real, that the business entities are real. And so you're going through methodical steps to document various characteristics of the individuals in the business. And so that's kind of, before anything happens, we're basically, you can call it papering or documenting the individual and the family to get everything set up. And as you can imagine, you're dealing with one of the largest banks in the entire country, if not world. Everything is going to be documented and in a good way scrutinized. And so that's kind of these initial steps, which is we are just data gathering to see if this is real or not.
Were there any funds in this account at this point?
So from our side, there was nothing. So essentially it was, we own these government contracting businesses. We're going to have significant funds coming and going from these accounts, which if it was real, U.S. Trust and the private bank would absolutely be the best place to go to do all this. And so at the time, there's nothing in these accounts. We are essentially getting everything set up or getting the piping in place to allow money to come into the account and then be a real source of financial help. But no, nothing, to my knowledge, at least from a U.S. Trust side, there's nothing ever in the account.
By February 5th of 19, approximately 5:36, and if you could take a quick glance at that email.
Okay, I have that, Mr. Truman.
All right. Now, at this point, what was your understanding of the Cochran's intentions for the following day?
So, high level, if this was real, you have
Judge, I'm going to object to this answer. Already the beginning of this answer is non-responsive. We're talking about the travel of our clients, or my client, to the state of Virginia or North Carolina or wherever this gentleman was. We're not talking about high-level financial transactions. We're trying the money laundering case here.
We're not trying the money laundering case, but okay. Let's ask the question this way. Did you have a meeting set up with the Cochrans for February 6th of 2019?
So my understanding is they implied they were going to go to Lynchburg, Virginia. In order to set up these accounts, you have to physically sign a signature card. You have to have certain people witness this signature card. And I don't remember why they said they were going to Lynchburg. It could have been because of personnel or just certain requirements. But they had implied that they were going to go to Lynchburg. And again, a private bank or U.S. Trust job is to white glove, handhold service. And it's not uncommon for us to pick people up from the airport, et cetera. So when I'm looking at this email, Mr. Truman, this was trying to make their meetings go as smoothly and as efficiently as possible. And that's what
Judge,
we're doing in these emails.
this is a non-responsive
Trying to make sure they
objection, Your Honor. Objection. This is a non-responsive.
Hold on, Mr. Nexon.
This is a non-responsive answer. We're talking about the whole history of this. The prosecutor asked a very simple question, and the witness is rambling.
He's answering the question.
Overruled. Let's continue, please.
Thank
So guys, just reframe what you're trying to ask me. You're asking what we're doing, and we are trying to set up appropriate meetings and steps, all the appropriate steps to get certain accounts and relationships set up.
And that was to take place February 6th of 2019, correct?
Correct. That's what we were working towards. It looks like they said they were going to fly in, and so we were basically responding to their schedule and setting things up as best we could.
Did that meeting take place?
Never took place.
And you were notified about that Wednesday the 6th at 6:47 a.m. in an email from the defendant, correct?
Correct. I have it. I'm just in my packet. Yes, I had cancer and was up all night, and so again, we responded accordingly. That we are sorry, and we're kind of taking cues from this prospective client on their schedule. But correct, no one ever went to Lynchburg. No meetings took place.
But there was a reference at 3:37 p.m. on February 6th. You got another email from the defendant. What was the substance of that one?
So this is our court. We'll shoot for Friday. Is that the email?
Yes.
Yeah, so again, looking to reschedule is how I and our team read it. Was they were looking to reschedule, and so we kept trying to be accommodative and helpful.
And once again, that meeting never took place either, did it?
Correct.
And I realize you're operating under somewhat of a handicap, but there's an email from the defendant of March 14th of 2019. Could you take a look at that one?
I have that in front of me, correct.
And what did the defendant indicate to you was going to happen then?
So rereading this email, they are asking for wiring information for their account. They've said that $100,000 is coming in. Other government funds are coming. And that she's emailing a death certificate and the state paperwork so we can remove Michael. So in the interim, we've been informed that Michael was in the ICU and then passed. And so in that interim, that's where we are as of March 14th, which is trying to move money around with these accounts.
And the last one was the next day, March 15th. The defendant indicates to you that she can't log into her account. Is that a reference to a U.S. bank account, or am I missing something here?
I'm reading her email. She very easily could have had a Bank of America account.
I'm going to object to this.
Hold on, Mr. Nexon.
I'm going to object to the answer that has already been preceded with she could have easily done something. Either she did something or she didn't. So this is assuming facts in the evidence.
I think that's appropriate. Pose the question again, please, Mr. Truman, and I'll instruct the witness to please answer.
Court, this phrase in that email, I can't even log into my account, it was all set up by him. Did you take that as a reference to a U.S. bank or a Bank of America account, or is she talking about something else?
I don't know if she even had an account.
That's all the questions the state has. Thank you.
All right, cross-examination.
Did you ever talk to Michael Cochran about any of these transactions?
There was a gentleman on the phone at one time who would have been implied he was Michael Cochran. That's the only interaction I ever had with him. He was on the phone, supposedly in the car with Natalie, and this was early in the process. This would have been in February.
Okay. How many times did you talk to the prosecuting attorney's office in this case?
Can you repeat that?
How many times did you talk to the prosecuting attorney's office in this case? The lawyers in the prosecuting attorney's office?
If I remember, I think one time, maybe twice, and it was more to figure out if I could testify virtually, given kind of my location to the courthouse.
Among many, I would imagine thousands of transactions, you remember Natalie Cochran and you remember Michael Cochran.
I absolutely remember this, just given the nature of it, correct.
All right. Now, was Michael Cochran CC'd on all the communications that you had with Natalie Cochran?
I'm going back to the beginning of the email packet. I can see Michael had a CSG LLC email address. And so he was on the early emails. And then I want to say she took over as point person. Yeah, he would have. Now, here, I mean, it just kind of depends on the email, sir. I mean, Michael had Natalie and Michael both had CSG LLC US email addresses.
All right. So he could have known about all the aspects of whatever transactions they were supposed to transpire with your bank, right?
Again, she ran point. He was only ever communicative of the very first phone call.
All right. The sum total of your testimony, Mr. Nexon, is that Michael Cochran and Natalie Cochran and Michael Cochran were supposed to appear in your bank somehow. And they called off the appointment twice, right?
I'd say there's a little more to it than that, but if you don't want me to ad-lib...
No. I want you to answer my question. My question is, the sum total of your testimony is that they were supposed to have...
Objection. The subtotal of his testimony is his testimony, period.
Your testimony here today in this court is that they scheduled an appointment with you and didn't show up and canceled it, right?
I would say that's incorrect. She ended up typing checks and wrote false checks that our team knew, and this kind of all crumbled because you were dealing with a very sophisticated financial institution.
Your Honor, I move to strike this answer and instruct the jury.
Overruled. I'm going to allow the answer to stand.
All right.
Please.
They wrote some checks that, I'm going to ask you this, sir, one more time, and I want you to answer yes or no. Did they schedule an appointment with you and canceled it?
Yes, they canceled multiple appointments, correct.
Did they schedule more than one appointment with you and canceled it?
To my knowledge, there would have been two different in-person get-togethers, and then it all became email-driven communication.
How many appointments did they schedule with you? Mr. Nexon, please listen. How many appointments did they schedule with you and canceled?
In my recollection, two. One was they said they were going to go to Lynchburg. She then had cancer.
I didn't ask you about that. I just...
Let him answer.
Wait a minute. I asked you a very simple question, sir. How many appointments did they schedule and canceled? And you said two. Is that right?
Two.
All right.
Yes.
Now, and the reason did they give you any reasons why they scheduled those appointments and canceled them?
Yes.
And the reason was that Natalie was sick, right?
For the first one, correct.
Okay, for the second one, what was the excuse for the second one?
That Mr. Cochran was in the ICU.
Okay? And then in March, Mr. Cochran was dead, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
To our knowledge, yes.
So now the sum total of your testimony really is that they had two appointments that they canceled because of the illness of Mr. Cochran or my client, and then the third appointment, Mr. Cochran was dead. Is that a fair statement, sir?
In terms of appointments, yes.
Okay, that's all I want right now. The next question is, You don't have any idea about the circumstances of Mr. Cochran's death, do you? You don't know anything, first-hand knowledge about this.
At our time, we saw a death certificate, and that's our extent.
Mr. Nexon, you are a banker. You are dealing with Mr. Cochran and Mrs. Cochran. You don't have any first-hand knowledge of Michael Cochran's death, do you?
Again, I've never met these people in person.
So the answer would be no. So the answer from the first-hand knowledge of knowing anything about this case would be no. Would that be a correct statement?
In terms of his death?
Right.
I don't know how he died. I have a pretty damn good guess.
I move to strike this, Your Honor.
All right, I'm going to grant that or sustain that objection. Ladies and gentlemen, please disregard the last answer given by the witness. Continue, please, Mr. Victor.
Mr. Nexon, you apparently don't like my client, do you?
I think it's been a colossal waste of my time and many others' times in terms of months of going through this. That's my honest answer. It's a lot of time and resources, yes.
And that's why you're so belligerent right now, aren't you?
I'm not belligerent, but you're being belligerent with me, and I'll answer the question.
I think I'm done with this witness.
All right, redirect Mr. Truman.
As a banker, would you be belligerent to the people that wrote a bunch of hot checks?
Judge, I'm going to object.
Wait, hold on, Mr. Nexon. Objection has been raised.
I'm going to object. This is back to money laundering, money that has nothing to do with murder.
Well, I think we've extended the circumstances a little bit and opened a door, so I'm going to allow the question. You can pose it again, please, Mr. Truman.
From a banker's perspective, people that write bad checks, is that something that would cause you some irritation?
And now this is a comment on my client's character, and I object to that.
Well, I'm going to overrule the objection. Answer, if you can, please, Mr. Nexon.
I'm happy to. The only thing we would do is we would properly flag what happened. We did flag it internally, and then we kind of shut down conversations. And so in a way, we literally just follow our procedures and guidelines. And that's what we did here when the bad checks were written, is that we stopped communicating and we flagged it to our fraud department.
The bad checks were written in March of 2019?
Correct, yeah.
That's all the questions the state asked. Thank you.
And no account was ever open with your bank, right?
So again, I'm not in the operations side. I just can't answer that confidently, given I just don't have the full scope of everything in Bank of America. She could have opened an account and never funded it. So yes, there were checks written against an account.
All right. Anything further, Mr. Truman?
Nothing for the state, Your Honor. Thank
Mr.
you.
Victor?
Mercifully, no, Your
May
Honor.
this
Thank you.
witness be excused.
So far as the state's concerned, yes.
Oh, yes, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nexon. We appreciate your cooperation. You are excused, sir.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, we'll have to turn off the machine. Ladies and gentlemen, we